inclusive and a successful esports community? Well, is that question running on in your mind? If so, we've got a great panel coming up next. Well, we're looking at talking about changing the mindset and narrative, going beyond basic audience mechanics, role of education institutions, and the importance of marketing. Well, for this incredible discussion, we've got Tryke, Guitierrez, the CEO, Tier 1 Entertainment, Mark Chiu, the CEO of Team Flash. We've got Yasin, Debhalia, the Director, Head of Automation, Bidstack. We've got Abhishek Aggarwal, CEO, Trinity Gaming, and Laura Bryne from Swipe Right. Well, with this, I'd like to humbly welcome all our panelists on the stage and screen. Thank you all for joining us, and let's have a great and an informative panel discussion ahead.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the World Gaming and Esports Summit. My name is Laura Byrne and I'm a Senior Account Exec at Swipe Right. We're a global esports and gaming communications agency. And today I have the pleasure of moderating this panel where we're going to discuss how to build an inclusive and successful esports community. So I thought the best way to kick things off is to start with introductions. So maybe we should go around the virtual room, and then maybe we should start with Mark. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi guys, my name is Mark. I'm the Managing Director of Redente Sports and Rate Plus E, but at the same time the CEO of Team Flash. So as a team, we have in 3 countries. So our main base is actually in Vietnam. We have teams in Arena of Valor. We were the world champions in 2019. We have the League of Legends team, League of Legends Wild Rift, and also a Free Fire team as well. I think in Thailand, we just started a PUBG mobile team in earlier this year. And Singapore, home base, we have a Broadstar team, which is the reigning world champions as well. We also have an e-racing team, which is competing now as we speak on E1 Championship, as well as we have also a Mobile Legends team, hoping to learn a lot from Tryke, from their Blacklist team. And last but not least, we have also a FIFA 21 team, which was supposed to go to Copenhagen for the E-Nations Cup, but it was cancelled last minute. So that's a short summary of me. Thanks, Laura.
Great. Maybe Tryke, you want to go next?
Hi guys, I'm Tryke, the CEO and co-founder of Tier 1 Entertainment. Our company is in the intersection of esports, media properties, and the creator ecosystem. Right now, we have 1,000 plus content creators in gaming under our company. Outside of that, we have Blacklist International, which we fully own and operate. We're present in multiple countries. We're specifically in Japan, Philippines, Malaysia, Myanmar, in Vietnam, and eventually want to be in Indonesia. So yeah, I mean, that's what we do. And I'm just looking forward to be in this panel.
Great. Shivram, do you want to go next?
Yeah, hi, my name is Shivam Rao. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Trinity Gaming. Primarily, we are a talent management agency and our niche is gaming. And we are also into influencer marketing, white label projects for different, basically brands like Krafton and Tencent, basically for their games, like for India specific, it's BGMI, or before it used to be PUBG. And different publishers basically, and we manage around close to 400 influencers, and we are also into creating an ecosystem, and we also work as a CSP for Facebook gaming for the Indian region.
Wonderful. And then Yasin, do you want to?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, really excited to be on this panel, so thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm Yas, or Yas. I'm head of automation here at Bidstack. Bidstack is essentially an advertising technology platform that provides the end-to-end solution to allow brands to easily access mobile, PC, and video games by putting ads in natural spaces within the games. We've evolved from being a company that kind of just puts, ads into banners in places that look realistic. So on the side of a racetrack or on a billboard in an open world environment, to now looking at ways in which we can seamlessly get brands onto things like car skins, encompassing esports teams, how we can do kit sponsorship in FIFA, and also working with our industry peers to create standards and metrics to allow brands to also measure the ROI of in-game advertising.
Great. Well, it's lovely to have you all here today. So to kind of kick off the panel, I thought I would start with quite an open question to kind of give the audience some context. So a successful esports community stems from the success of a competitive game and the core competitive gamers that develop in the game's ecosystem. What is the demographic of esports communities and how is this demographic starting to shift? So I don't know who wants to be the one to kick it off. Tryke, I see you unmuted, so I'm going to come to you.
Okay. I guess for me, the biggest shift that's really happening, at least in this part of the world, is really mobile esports, right? I mean, based from the data that I got from Yuzu, 53% of the gaming market in the world is already composed of mobile. So most of them are in Southeast Asia. And I think, there is a very clear exponential growth in terms of user base when we're talking about PC to mobile, because in terms of like access to those devices, it's cheaper, it's easier to understand. The learning curve is so much easier. And I think being able to tap a new platform on its own just changed esports as a whole in terms of everything. And for me, like, I'm just excited on how, the infrastructure that was built on the PC platform and the console platform gets applied to this new platform that's really more widely accepted in a way.
Interesting. And just on the topic of mobile esports, what do you think it is about mobile esports that does attract that? What makes it kind of more inclusive? Is it like the lower barrier to entry? Is it just the way they market their esports? What do you think it is?
I think I think number one is still the low barrier to entry, right? At the end of the day, like, especially in the Southeast Asian market, like, not a lot of people have a lot of money. And I think, being able to have devices that are cheaper, sometimes below like $200, and you can already play games, that really changes the whole game in terms of like accessibility in the esports platform, right? That's for one. And I think for the second point, being able to understand that a gamer today is someone who plays on a phone versus someone who plays on a PC or a console game or platform just changes the whole perspective of what a gamer is, right? Because before, there was a certain perception that if you're a gamer, you're someone who just plays PC, and there is a certain, I mean, that's still true, right? Like, there is a certain expectation of what we look like and how we look like. But once you unlock a new platform such as mobile, it's like everybody can be a gamer already, right? In fact, in the Philippines, like 3 out of 4 people who are online are already gamers. So imagine that level of change is just a big, big difference in terms of the esports ecosystem.
Interesting. I know, Mark, you have quite a lot of experience with mobile esports. I don't know what your thoughts on kind of why they've been so successful in that way.
No, I think I agree with Tryke totally. I think in Vietnam as well, right? I think if you just walk around the streets, you do not need to bring even a laptop, right? You do not need to bring a PC around. Just going to coffee shops and you have people gathering and playing together. So it's really now it's a social gathering where people come in. Of course, it's a lot of people say some of them talk over the phone via across the table, but a lot of them actually meet up to play games. You do not need to be at home. You don't need to be in somebody's house. You just get to a nearby coffee shop and then you can see people playing games. And I think that's a very common sight, not only in Philippines, but anywhere in Southeast Asia, in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in Vietnam. And I think that's why the esports viewership has grown, right? I think in Vietnam, our Arena of Valor teams plays, and easily on YouTube itself, they get easily 500,000 people watching our team play at any point of time, and that's the kind of visibility, because if people watch it on YouTube, and with mobile data is so cheap, and it's relatively now really a lot of mobile companies really it's a very low barrier of entry. So a lot of people just tap on data on Wi-Fi or wherever they go, and it's just so convenient to actually access mobile.
Interesting. Anyone else wanted to touch on mobile esports at all? Maybe Shivram?
Yeah, a very similar story for our region as well, because it all comes down to access, right? And mobile is something which is now getting cheaper and cheaper. And so the similar case with our region, right? The buying power is less. So directly it's like mobile first for everything, right? So access to videos, access to gaming, it all comes down to whatever they can play on the device, right? So in Indian region, games like PUBG and Free Fire were basically, when they came, they changed the whole notion, right? And through strategic events and strategies by these developers, they were able to monetize and build up views and capture that audience and create that ecosystem. So definitely the access is required, but also for these publishers to understand the market and do these specific tournaments and activities were a huge push in our region, and that in turn created a huge lot of influencers and huge lot of content. And since the population is in India is too high, we were generating enormous amount of views as well. So it's definitely all about access. Yeah.
And then kind of accessing that audience. One thing that has become very apparent and something that a lot of companies and organizations use is kind of community managers. So I don't know if anyone wants to talk about their approach to community management, how this has helped develop your kind of communities for your different organizations. Maybe Mark or Shivram, yeah? Go for it.
Yeah, so
Sure.
in terms of communities, since India is a very diverse country, right? In every state there is a different language. So to basically cater to all these individual communities, right? Individuals have created their own sort of ecosystems. There are different organizations operating on a language basis, right? And all this has resulted in a very dedicated strong audience base, and which is basically which brings a lot of ROI for us for in brand campaigns when we do it, right? Because whenever there is a hardcore following and whenever it comes down to a regional language, the ROI is what we have observed is much better than the, let's say, in India, Hindi is a national language, right? Everyone speaks it. But the ROI for brands in region-specific campaigns, which is specific to some states or some language, the ROI is always much higher. So that sort of community effect is, I would say, returns are much higher.
And it's interesting what you say about having different strategies for maybe kind of your local communities versus maybe your international communities. I don't know, maybe Mark, if you want to jump in and talk about if you have different strategies in that sense, the ones for your international fans and the one for your local fans.
No, I think we look at it. I think in Vietnam market, I think similar to Tryke, I think to Shivam, I think our own respective market is already quite big enough. And I think basically due to language as well, I think language in this region plays a very important part. I think when our fans actually feel closer because we're able to speak Vietnamese, right? I think every org has different kinds of ways of monetizing, milking it and stuff like that. I think for us is that we are quite team centric. And then a lot of them actually, so we've been approached by, we actually have moved 3 platforms over the last 3 years, from Nemo TV to Facebook, and now we are on Booyah, right? And of course, they're being paid as a streamer, right? I think Booyah is in India, right, Shivam, now, I would say. Yeah, so I think, yeah, correct. So they also look at, I think different developers have different strategies as well, right? I think Booyah is also owned by Garena, so they're quite specific in specific games that they want to really push from, so it really depends on. India is about monetizing, which is very key, and from other than monetizing is how do we work with our partners to actually drive traffic and actually increase our revenue at the same time. I think as an org we try to be, of course, reaching out to the community, but at the same time, this our talents are definitely, we see how do we look to monetize revenues as much as possible, which is actually an important component because in this industry is still very new, very young. So we also have to teach the right, values and what to be put into the content as well. Content can be very wide, varied, and different target. I think Vietnam has certain like a bit of comedy, a bit more fun, but maybe in India, Vietnam, Philippines have different strategies as well. So I don't really target internationally, but we do have fans in Thailand from Vietnam. So we see how we can look at it, but sometimes it's not that easy. I'll just try to Tryke as well for the Philippines market.
Yep. I guess on our end, managing communities are very natural with Tier 1 because two of the co-founders are influencers like me and Alodia. Of course, with her, she has 7 million followers on Facebook. So she wouldn't be able to go to that point if she doesn't know how to handle multiple communities, right? And I think with gaming, subcultures are very important. And fortunately for us, in terms of like the DNA of the company, since we are in the creator ecosystem, we have multiple representations in different communities. So may it be, COD Mobile or MLBB or a PUBG Mobile. We have an influential person in that space that kind of like are evangelists about Tier 1, Blacklist, and everything that we do. And I think this is very important because with Gen Zs and millennials getting shorter attention spans by the year, and with the rise of TikTok, now they only have 30-second attention spans, right? So like it's very important to have someone who is native in that community and for them to be able to represent your brand so that they get to understand what you are about beyond the wins, beyond everything that you're kind of like showing, and really find that element to make them feel that this is not just a team. This is not just a company. This is a movement. So for us, that's kind of like the approach that we're trying to do with Tier 1.
Interesting. And then how important would you say are the platforms that you choose? So you mentioned TikTok, Matt mentioned the different streaming services. How important is it to maybe pick a certain streaming service in order to connect with the community? And obviously there's other platforms where you could reach new audiences, but it'd be nice to know kind of your approach with, picking platforms for socials, streaming and stuff like that.
For us, I think all the platforms are important, right? Because we don't see it as like you can reach an audience by just using one or two platforms. We feel like these are multiple universes that exist, especially with Gen Zs. They're so used to like going through all of these platforms at the same time for some reason, right? And for us, like the most important thing is really identifying what format in what platform. And you need to really equip your marketing team and the people in your company to understand what format fits TikTok, what format fits Instagram, what format fits Facebook, YouTube, and whatnot, and to be able to change the treatment and the durations and everything, all of the intricacies that come with it, for it to look attractive to the different audiences that you have. And us being a natural influencer company, these are things that are kind of like talked about every day. Algorithms don't tag this initially. 30 seconds should be the first 3 seconds should be this. Like these are the conversations that happen on a day-to-day from our back end to the talents, and all of these sharing of information gets us in a way more advanced in terms of like understanding the algorithm of the different social media platforms.
Interesting. One thing I wanted to touch on, which I know a couple of you guys have touched on as well, is just kind of the monetization aspect and the brands getting involved as well in esports. So obviously a part of reaching new audiences is all about partnering with brands outside of the space. I know a lot of people in this panel have worked with a lot of big non-endemic brands. So I don't know, maybe Shivram, if you want to kick off and talk about some of the kind of more non-endemic brands you've partnered with, kind of how has your community responded to working with those brands, and kind of, yeah, I know there was a lot of questions, but yeah.
Yeah. So I would say the gaming community as a whole is not that old in India, right? It all started, I would say, like 2-3 years back. So we have seen that there has been a steady increase in collaborations with non-endemic brands, but it's still not at the level that we imagined, right? So a couple of brands we have done quite recently. One is with Gillette. So it was basically curated around Father's Day, and so it's all about how the story needs to be run, right? It's all about so it's not directly a product, right? It's more of a brand awareness sort of strategy. So it totally depends what the brand needs. So in terms of Gillette, it was all about market awareness, because the audience is between like 14 to 25 to 30, right? And Gillette is product place, brand recognition is always there. Then another brand we did was, it was a truly wireless headphones. So that is where we integrated the gaming part of it. And since it's truly wireless, it can be, synced with your mobile phone or PC. It's more easy to carry and everything. So in that it was a little bit of ROI plus brand awareness. So slowly in the Indian region, we have seen that the interest is growing. A lot of OTT platforms have also now come in, and we are basically working with them to create some sort of new IPs or new content ideas revolving around gaming. Yeah, so that's what we have done as of now.
Lovely. I wanted to pass it to Yasin because obviously Bidstack, you're known for kind of finding unique ways to engage with gamers. Is there any particular trends that you've seen which games have been looking at to widen their audiences, or any kind of successful community activations that you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you mentioned non-endemic brands, because actually most of the brands that we work with at Bidstack are non-endemic. We work with a range of different brands, from like Burberry to Pac Rabanne to Under Armour to Samsung to Subway. So it's a whole kind of range of different brands that are really trying to tap into this space. I guess a testament to this is I started at Bidstack right at the start of the pandemic when the UK went into lockdown last March. So I guess one of the great things that came out of this global crisis was its ability to really kind of shine the light on gaming and the esports hype around it. We all know that the gaming industry is worth nearly $300 billion. And also there's approximately like 3 billion gamers worldwide. So it's kind of no surprise that we've got brands that are really trying to rush and find their identity in this, this metaverse that we're kind of calling it now. Interestingly, we've seen things like from the Super Bowl, who is notoriously known for bringing these massive audiences worldwide, has suffered its lowest viewership in 15 years. Is it evident that people are now shifting away from kind of traditional sports, but actually now moving into digital first media channels? Maybe. But actually what we're finding now is that before, traditional sports was kind of the entry point into the gamified version. So you'd find that people that were fans of NFL are now playing Madden, or people that were football fans are now playing FIFA. But actually there is a new audience now, particularly the younger audiences, who are actually going for a gaming first, or actually esports first. And this, what gaming is doing and what esports is doing is really driving the passion points of these communities. So brands are really trying to find their way to trying to align with that. So brands who typically, for example, should align with traditional sports sponsorships are now finding their identity within the gaming sphere, and they're trying to replicate that in the same way they would do that in the real world. So an example is I'm working with a very, very global, a very, very well-known global luxury hotel chain, and they're very synonymous in the US with sponsoring the main sporting events, but now they're using gaming to actually engage like leisure travelers and to engage this audience, because they know that, A, these people are likely to invest in leisure travel, B, that these people have the decision-making and spending power that brands desire from their consumers, and C, because it's a community and they all share, and when you do something right within gaming, it has this kind of snowball effect. And that kind of sports gaming phenomenon, it is right, it does have a snowballing effect, right? Because we're seeing more and more footballers, for example, kind of launching their own esports teams or advocating in esports teams and bringing brands to kind of tap into that space even more. I kind of touched on sport though, and I guess sport's one of those places that is very obvious, but actually you will actually find that, and I mentioned Burberry as one of the brands that we work with, but there are a lot more luxury brands, and the campaigns that we mostly celebrate are actually the ones that are coming from luxury brands such as like Louis Vuitton. So obviously they did their activation in League of Legends, where they create an exclusive capsule collection. They designed that trophy case, and it's a way that luxury fashion has kind of actually broken the norm of what they typically do, which is to feature in a publication like Vogue, or do something that is, they create their presence on a runway or something like that. But actually they've encapsulated this esports audience, and did it work? Well, yeah, because they sold out their capsule collection in a matter of like hours. And Tommy Hilfiger did the same when they launched their full 2020 collection on Animal Crossing. So luxury brands are trying to find their way into tapping into these esports gaming communities. But my absolute favorite example of kind of its community activation and way brands are getting involved is actually in Fortnite. And obviously we know Fortnite is at the forefront of doing this, this creating this metaverse. And it's actually this cross-media collaboration. So the Travis Scott astronomical event that actually leveraged on the pandemic because it created this online large-scale event that was enjoyed, and it was enjoyed by millions of people, and it was live and obviously streamed back as well, and it actually attracted around 12 million people for the live event, and then I think around 48 million people watched it across both live and streaming. But not many people actually realized that it was just a big Nike advert, and actually that activation proved really positive results for them because Travis Scott wore multiple pairs of Air Jordans within that. And actually what Nike found was that exposure value across that period of time that it was streamed for provided a lot of benefit for Nike, especially across social media. So what's the takeaway? I mean, if brands can find a way to find their identity within games and with the esports community and do it in a positive way that enhances the gameplay, then it does actually provide ROI. Because one of the things that we're trying to do at Bidstack as well is trying to find ways in which we prove the value of in-game activation, and it just needs to be authentic and native, and that really does resonate with this community, and it builds more of a community around it as well. So brands are definitely, I think, playing an important part in building that up.
Seeing a lot of nodding heads from people. Did anyone want to say anything off the back of what Yasin just talked about?
I think that was amazing.
No, I think it was really great to hear. I think usually in Europe and the US, of course, I think the brands are definitely much more open to try new initiatives and ideas. And I think in this part of the world, I think we did a collaboration with Vietjet and airline as well in 2019. And it was one of the non-endemic brands that came in. I think they were really excited, and to see. We also did a video where we used animation to put our players on the plane itself, and everybody thought did Vietjet actually spray paint our pictures on the plane, but actually it was all via virtual design and stuff like that. But of course, due to pandemic, they had to stop the sponsorship. But if not, so I think in Asia itself, we've seen many brands coming in, including Tumi and other brands looking at esports as well. So I think it will continue to grow, and there's so much potential opportunities as well.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to share some of the non-endemic executions that we've done as well for Tier 1. I think for one of the biggest thing that we've done with the non-endemic brand was with Adidas, where we did an activation for a certain shoe line that they had for the future, in which that went very well. For the second one, it was with a convenience store in the Philippines where they branded multiple cups with different esports teams. And then from there, you get to know how much sales will your cup get from out of all of the teams in the league that are part of our esports league, and Blacklist top that in terms of sales. So that kind of speak a lot about, it's not just about awareness anymore, it's getting to a point of affinity and then into a conversion. Because I think that's what really matters to these non-endemic brands, right? Before, in the old era of esports, you're always talking about awareness, but at the point, people would want affinity and people would want, conversions in all of these activations that we're doing. And I think with more sophisticated data and being able to find ways to track all of these marketing activities that are happening, as long as you show conversion, all of these are going to continuously flow in the esports ecosystem.
I mean, I was just going to add to that because I totally agree. It's still a test and learn process, right? Because brands are using gaming as a way to create, large brand affinity. And the one thing that brands want the most is high brand affinity, because it's the way that we relate. There were studies done that if we took away advertising from certain media channels, where people notice a difference, and they go, yeah, because advertising, particularly in an out-of-home context, actually makes, for example, if you're on the tube and you take away the ads, you actually notice difference. It creates a positive experience. People actually expect it. They want to see it, right? But if it has a negative context, and obviously, if people they disregard it, gamers are extremely passionate. We've seen examples of ways that brands have done activation in game, and it has gone badly because they've not necessarily done the right way. But we were there with social media. So when brands were trying to use influencers as a way to, you know, push brands, but they were doing it in a very unnatural way. And, you know, like there was famously Kim Kardashian or the other Kardashian sisters were pushing products, but they weren't doing it because we know they wouldn't use this. It's because they weren't doing it in an authentic way. I think we're at that stage of gaming right now, but I think once we get past that, it will become very easy, very natural for brands to then actually do it in a way that actually is community led.
Yeah, I mean, on our end, just to add to that, it will really require a lot of education on brands' end because they're really used to purchasing an advertising order in a way where they want it exactly in a certain way. And I think if you're tapping into the influencer marketing side of esports, in which you're trying to get into communities, authenticity is super important, and being able to allow enough creative freedom to all of these content creators and players are really the key to making sure that that works. However, if you're really, you know, like you want full control on the creativity part, there's an aspect where you can actually do IPs, right? I mean, you can co-brand into an IP that's more polished and stuff. And I think once we get to that, I mean, once everybody understands that part of, you know, the movement in the internet, maybe it's going to be so much easier for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Some great insights there on brands. I wanted to just shift things a little bit to talk about kind of the part that education plays in building communities. So I'm going to pass this on to Mark to talk a little bit about Team Flash recently partnered with XCL Education. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what that partnership entails and how that kind of weaves into you guys and your community building.
Yeah, but I think being a father of two myself, I think education always plays an important part. I think compared to a lot of, I think my fellow panelists are slightly on the older end, I would say, you know. So, you know, when I got into esports, to be frank, only around 4 years ago, I'm a very traditional sports person. I've been involved in more sports, in cricket and other stuff. But, you know, when I came into esports, I always believe in education, because to change the mentality of parents, to change the mentality of even sponsors as well, right? So, you know, when there was an opportunity to partner with XCL Education Group, I think, of course, it's already big in the US and in Europe as well for education piece. But I think in this part of Southeast Asia, I think when I spoke to XCL, it's a big international group, international school group, where they have schools, international schools in Singapore, in, I would say, even in Malaysia and Vietnam. And I see the perfect sense as well. You know, how do we work together, right? This many parents coming to me and said, my son loves Dota, my son, but how do he be a professional player? You know, and I've done many talks in schools, and when we see these young kids, you know, coming to the talks and their eyes open, like a dream, they want to be an esports player, an influencer, but how they do it with the right education and to convince the parents. So when the opportunity arises with XCL, you know, what we're going to do with them is to form an esports club in all their international schools in the region, you know, at the same time to guide their school of the committee as well to organize their own events. We're going to have XCL dialogues to actually share with parents, to bring influencers, you know, maybe I'd like to invite Tryke and Shivam as well, you know, the influencers to come on board as well to share their experiences with the kids, with the parents as well over that side, you know, and then from then on, maybe regional tertiary institutions as well to come to play together the competition in Singapore, brings in travel, you know, a lot of tourism dollars, especially in this time. And last but not least, hopefully to create our own academy as well, right? I think there's a big pool of talent in Vietnam, big pool of talent in Malaysia as well. So rather than we hold open trials, but give them a proper pathway to actually come and play for our team. So many different facets of how we work together is just an MOU. So we hope to hone in on key aspects that we can really grow this piece, at least in the next couple of years.
Yeah, it's very interesting what you say about it being like a two-prong approach, where it's like educating the young people about how there's the opportunities in esports, at the same time educating the parents that esports is a viable career option. So yeah, no, it sounds really great what you guys are doing. Shivam, I don't know if you want to talk about kind of what educational bodies and stuff there is in the region that you kind of reside in. What's the kind of situation?
Yeah, so the situation in our region is, I would say, not not good because the esports and gaming is still it's not recognized by the government. There is no federation or official body who governs it. So it's still difficult for, since all of these are youngsters, the first barrier is always the parents, right? They don't understand the basically what type of different work areas you can enter, right, in gaming and esports. So we are in a process of creating an academy because this is a problem which is not getting, answered in our region. So we are in process of launching basically a educational platform. It's called Gaming Gurukul. Gurukul is basically a term for school, and in that we'll be basically teaching different verticals of gaming. It could be esports, it could be streaming. We will be educating different people, and basically we educate them on how to become a streamer, how to become an influencer, what all job areas we can, train them for. Let's say it could be league operation, it could be production, it could be any sort of backend, it could be talent management. So because our market is pretty new and we have a good sort of experience in it, so we will be giving out training and giving out education sessions on these. So that is our initiative to basically grow our ecosystem, because in terms of official recognition, we are still struggling. Yeah.
Interesting. And do you think there will be that official recognition in 5 years, 10 years? What's the kind of timeline do you foresee?
I would say it should, because there have been a lot of talks. There have been some sort of statements coming out from the government, but I would say at least 2 years. We still have to wait, yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting what you say about government bodies, because this is something I also wanted to bring up, of kind of the role that they play. And I don't know, Mark, if you want to talk about kind of in your region what the kind of government body situation is, or in like federations.
Yeah, I think if we talk about federations there, we could talk for a fair bit of time, right? I think everybody wants to be in this space, right? Of course, in past years, there's one global esports federation, there's an international esports federation, there's Asian esports federation. I think everybody likes to see how they could come into this space. But I think in Singapore, I think the government has been really pretty proactive. They see this as a big sector to come in. I think despite the pandemic this year, we had 3 major esports events in Singapore this year. We have actually a Dota major earlier this year. We have the Free Fire World Championships and also the M2, the Mobile Legends World Championship Season 2, I think. And this was actually supported hugely by the Singapore Tourism Board, that they know that this is actually a good space to be in. And I think we did our own esports event 2019, Clash of Champions for Mobile Legends, which actually led to quite a fair bit of stuff. But I think Riot Games just announced the Wild Rift World Champion, the World Championships in Singapore in end November, and I'm sure there's a couple more big tournaments that's going to be announced in the near future in Singapore. So I think the government is pretty supportive to grow this sector, as of course to promote tourism, but schools as well. I think we have seen quite a big open in terms of mentality. There's a lot of community events, even a lot of the government organizations, like what we call the People's Association, organizing events because they need to reach out to the youth, right? I think they know that. So I think the last year and a half has changed quite a fair bit because of the pandemic. We can't get out. So what are the kids doing on games, right? I think so. But the best way is actually to be involved and to teach the right values. And I think the government has seen that. Yep.
I was going to say from my perspective, it's really interesting to see even on this panel, like, different markets, different countries that are all taking a very different approach to it, particularly here and I would like to say it's a UK or a Western perspective, but actually I've heard about things in Australia, which I'll come on to in a couple of minutes. But like from a UK perspective, we are finding that esports and gaming is now kind of driving a new sector in terms of, employment. Like I mentioned when we had our kind of private chat before this panel about they're creating an esports facility here. So the government is definitely backing people. And what I actually found really interesting is I talk to people across different markets all the time. In Australia, the government is actually providing, I believe, a tax relief for any businesses that's involved in like producing games, or if they're contributing towards esports in some sort of way. So there are markets that are definitely trying to drive this forward and are benefiting people to getting involved as well. And then of course, when we touch back on education, I know that the UK has always been quite forward thinking in providing younger people with the skills, and when it comes to coding and producing digital assets, which obviously video games comes into that. So definitely advocating it here. But I think the one thing that will have a domino effect on loads of different markets, particularly markets that are maybe not as progressive or at that stage yet, and maybe are pushing towards that, is the fact that esports is now an Olympic event. In the next Olympics, we'll actually see people compete in sports as part of like being an Olympic event, which is massive, because we all know that Olympics is all about people who are really strong and fit and are playing, they're the best in the world. And I think that will, that's in 3 years' time, but I think that will really push the entire global community to take this seriously across all governments.
Great. I am conscious of time, so I thought maybe it might be good to go around everybody and just kind of have a final thought of where you kind of see what are the sectors that you feel that esports communities will grow the most, kind of maybe what your organization is doing in particular, and kind of any trends, just kind of a final thought, just to kind of summarize everything. So maybe Shivram, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so I would say recognition, like I'll just talk about for my region specifically. I would say primarily our focus is towards, getting these influencers, these gamers much more recognition, so that we have more brands coming in. And obviously, since it's a new market, it's all about educating these influencers and gamers as well. So that is what we are focusing on. So basically, improving the quality and the delivery of the content. So it's a primarily importance because in the end, the brand will always focus on the type of content which is being delivered. So in our region, that is something that we are constantly, focusing on, that the overall quality increases, the brand value will also increase.
Wonderful. I'll pass it over to Mark for your final thoughts.
Yeah, I think final thoughts, I think in Vietnam, right, I think we definitely look to expand our reach, especially I think like what Tryke mentioned, the mobile market. I think it's just going to grow exponentially again and again, right? And I think with Honor of Kings next year, combining with AOV, right, and the prize pool is targeted at $8 million next year, and we see that potential. And I think overall we look at the whole ecosystem, I look at it very sports centric as well. How do we educate? How do we actually build academies? And I think it will grow into that area that one day, transfer fees, right? I think, 20 years ago in UK, we get Alan Shearer at 15 million pounds. But now you look at how much that easily at 80, 90 million is nothing in the blink of an eye. So we look at that space, how do we grow that space? And at the same time, how do we educate and change the mindset, especially, to bring more non-SME brands to come in. Yeah.
Great. Tryke?
To me, especially with the pandemic that's still ongoing, right? I truly believe that the gaming space is the future of sports and entertainment, in a way where esports is a sports and streaming and content creation is the entertainment side of the business. And I think the most important thing really is to value and double down on education with the all of the multiple institutions that are in this space really has to think of education as a primary factor to be able to change the whole space. Because with education, social acceptance will follow after education. And I think it can come from different points, right? It can come from the academic space, it can come from the private sector, from your commercializations and your grants and whatnot, to just simple parents trying to understand what their kids are actually doing today. And I feel like once you have that social acceptance, if you really focus on making sure that everybody is educated, that this is not something just purely negative, and there is a future in terms of career and everything else around gaming, I think they will kind of embrace the weirdness that's here and then a lot of things will really unlock.
Wonderful. Yasin, do you want to wrap us up?
Yes, I think from a Bidstack perspective, from a brand perspective, there are probably three things I would say that we will do now and going forward. So the first thing is education. So just continue to educate brands on this space in terms of like finding their identity within the gaming world, and to be authentic with that too, whether they are trying to be authentic to an esports team that they're sponsoring or just being inside a game, and to deliver a positive experience and have context and be native to that game that they're in without kind of, disrupting the gameplay, and just, delivering a positive, definitely delivering a positive experience. The second thing is measurement. So like, giving brands the ability to understand where their advertising dollars are going to, because that's fundamentally the thing that they're going to be looking for. And as we move forward, this is a digital platform with all digital media channels. They look for what they're actually getting in terms of an ROI. And then the third one, the clue is in my title, is automation, actually giving brands the ability to seamlessly activate in-game advertising or activate brand activations within games in a really easy way to do so. I think we are right now just scraping the sides, and I think it's moving so quickly. In the next kind of 2 to 3 years, I think we will definitely be in a place where, in the same way you buy Instagram ads, the same way you buy Google ads, you will buy ads in Fortnite.
Great, wonderful sentiment to finish it off about the potential. Great. So then, thank you everyone for watching the panel. Thank you to my panelists, a very interesting discussion, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the summit.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
So, ladies and gentlemen, what a fantastic panel discussion that was on how to build an inclusive and a successful esports community. Definitely a lot to take back from that. Thank you so much, Tryke, Mark, Yasin, Abhishek, and Laura on that incredible discussion.